Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is from chapter 299. Chapter 299. The rain had stopped, and only the mist was falling in drops from the trees. Denisov, the esaul, and Petya rode silently, following the peasant in the knitted cap who, stepping lightly with outturned toes and moving noiselessly in the bast shoes over the roots and wet leaves, silently led them to the edge of the forest. He ascended an incline, stopped, looked about him, and advanced to where the screen of trees was less dense. On reaching a large oak tree that had not yet shed its leaves, he stopped and beckoned mysteriously to them with his hand. Denisov and Petya rode up to him. From the spot where the peasant was standing, they could see the French. Immediately beyond the forest, on a downward slope, lay a field of spring rye. To the right, beyond a steep ravine, was a small village and a landowner's house with a broken roof. In the village, in the house, in the garden, by the well, by the pond, over all the rising ground, and all along the road uphill from the bridge leading to the village, not more than 500 yards away, crowds of men could be seen through the shimmering mist. Their un-Russian shouting at their horses, which were straining uphill with the carts, and their calls to one another, could be clearly heard. "Bring the prisoner here," said Denisov in a low voice, not taking his eyes off the French. A Cossack dismounted, lifted the boy down, and took him to Denisov. Pointing to the French troops, Denisov asked him what these and those of them were. The boy, thrusting his cold hands into his pockets and lifting his eyebrows, looked at Denisov in affright, but in spite of an evident desire to say all he knew, he gave some confused answers, merely assenting to everything Denisov asked of him. Denisov turned away from him frowning and addressed the esaul, conveying his own conjectures to him. Petya, rapidly turning his head, looked now at the drummer boy, now at Denisov, now at the esaul, and now at the French in the village and along the road, trying not to miss anything of importance. "Whether Dólokhov comes or not, we must seize it, eh?" said Denisov, with a merry sparkle in his eyes. "It's a very suitable spot," said the esaul. "We'll send the infantry down by the swamps," Denisov continued. "Then we'll creep up to the garden. You'll ride up from there with the Cossacks." He pointed to a spot in the forest beyond the village. "And I with my hussars from here. And at the signal shot—" "The hollow is impossible. There's a swamp there," said the esaul. "The horses would sink. We must ride around, more to the left." While they were talking in undertones, the crack of a shot sounded from the low ground by the pond. A puff of white smoke appeared, then another, and the sound of hundreds of seemingly merry French voices shouting together came up from the slope. For a moment, Denisov and the esaul drew back. They were so near that they thought they were the cause of the firing and shouting. But the firing and shouting did not relate to them. Down below, a man wearing something red was running through the marsh. The French were evidently firing and shouting at him. "Why, that's our Tikhon," said the esaul. So it is. "The wascal," said Denisov. "He'll get away," said the esaul, screwing up his eyes. The man whom they called Tikhon, having run up the stream, plunged in so that the water splashed in the air, and having disappeared for an instant, scrambled out on all fours, all black with wet, and ran on. The French who had been pursuing him stopped. "Smart that," said the esaul. "What a beast," said Denisov. with his former look of vexation. "What has he been doing all this time?" "Who is he?" asked Petya. "He's our plastun. I sent him to capture a tongue." "Oh, yes," said Petya, nodding at the first words Denisov uttered as if he understood it all, though he did not really understand anything of it. Tikhon Shcherbati was one of the most indispensable men in their band. He was a peasant from Pokrovsk, near the river Gzat. When Denisov had come to Pokrovsk at the beginning of his operations and had as usual summoned the village elder and asked him what he knew about the French, the elder, as though shielding himself, had replied, as all the village elders did, that he had neither seen nor heard anything of them. But when Denisov explained that his purpose was to kill the French, and asked if no French had strayed that way, the elder replied that he had seen more orderers that had really been at their village, but that Tikhon Shcherbati was the only man who dealt with such matters. Denisov had Tikhon called, and having praised him for his activity, said a few words in the elder's presence about loyalty to the Tsar and the country, and the hatred of the French that all sons of the fatherland should cherish. "We don't do the French any harm," said Tikhon, evidently frightened by Denisov's words. "We only fooled about with the lads for fun, you know. We killed a score or so of the more orderers, but we did no harm else." Next day, when Denisov had left Pokrovsk, having quite forgotten about this peasant, it was reported to him that Tikhon had attached himself to their party and asked to be allowed to remain with it. Denisov gave orders to let him do so. Tikhon, who at first did rough work, laying campfires, fetching water, flaying dead horses, and so on, soon showed a great liking and aptitude for partisan warfare. At night he would go out for booty, and always brought back French clothing and weapons, and when told to, would bring in French captives also. Denisov then relieved him from the drudgery that he was doing, and began taking him with him when he went out on expeditions, and had him enrolled among the Cossacks. Tikhon did not like riding, and always went on foot, never lagging behind the cavalry. He was armed with a musketoon, which he carried rather as a joke, a pike, and an axe, which latter he used as a wolf uses its teeth, with equal ease picking fleas out of its fur or crunching thick bones. Tikhon with equal accuracy would split logs with blows at arm's length, or holding the head of an axe would cut little thin pegs or carve spoons. In Denisov's party he held a peculiar and exceptional position. When anything particularly difficult or nasty had to be done, to push a cart out of the mud with one's shoulders, pull a horse up out of the swamp by its tail, skin it, slink in among the French, or walk more than 30 miles a day, everybody pointed laughingly at Tikhon. "It won't hurt that devil, he's as strong as a horse," they said of him. Once a Frenchman Tikhon was trying to capture fired a pistol at him and shot him in the fleshy part of the back. That wound, which Tikhon treated only with internal and external applications of vodka, was the subject of the liveliest jokes by the whole of the detachment, jokes in which Tikhon readily joined. "Hello, mate! Never again? Gave you a twist?" the Cossacks would banter him, and Tikhon, purposefully writhing and making faces, pretending to be angry, and swore at the French with the funniest of curses. The only effect of this incident on Tikhon was that after being wounded, he seldom brought in prisoners. He was the bravest and most useful man in the party. No one found more opportunities for attacking, no one captured or killed more Frenchmen, and consequently he was made the buffoon of all the Cossacks and Hussars, and willingly accepted that role. Now he had been sent by Denisov overnight to Shamshevo to capture a tongue. But whether because he had not been content to take only one Frenchman, or because he had slept through the night, he had crept by day into some bushes right among the French, and, as Denisov had witnessed from above, had been detected by them. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 299. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 299. Tikhon's Caesarean Section and the Inevitability of Death. The Sicilian pirates, according to Plutarch, were the most murderous of men. From about the time of the salting of Carthage to the ripening of the Pax Romana, this bloodthirsty people plundered the Mediterranean Sea. One happy day, their marauding yielded the lucrative prize of a Roman vessel among whose company was a young man named Julius Caesar. The Sicilian pirates loved Julius Caesar. He was a funny little boy of the ransom of Red Chief charm, who entertained them with his poetry and his sport. They got a particular kick out of his indignant request that they raise the insultingly paltry price of his ransom to a point more befitting his station. And oh, how they must have chuckled at his puppy-yelped threat to crucify them all once his ransom was met. They probably didn't chuckle all that much, though, after his ransom was met and he crucified them all. It is Caesar's fearless disdain of death that later inspired Shakespeare to provide him with the immortal lines, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste death but once. Of all the wonders that I have yet heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come." The war sections of War and Peace present plenty of less gallant contemplations of death. Recall that both Nicholas and Pierre cower before death's presence in the heat of battle. The Stoics warned against this type of cowardice. They argue that a good life is, in part, preparation for an easy, welcoming death. Today, Tikhon's Caesarian approach to death lives up to the Stoics' example. Tikhon is fearless. Whenever Denisov needs someone for a dangerous mission, he doesn't even need to ask. Tikhon is there. And when Tikhon is injured during a mission, like the time a Frenchman shot him in the ass with a pistol, he just laughs it off with his good friends in the regiment and his best friend, vodka. In fact, Tikhon is the man who Denisov earlier dispatched to capture an officer of the French transport. Today, Denisov happens upon the French transport. He watches as they first spot and then open fire on Tikhon, who, with more frolic than fuss, sports away from them. That's the spirit of a man for whom taste of the necessary end will come but only once. Daily Meditation. And I ask you, would you not say that one was the greatest of fools who believed that a lamp was worse off when it was extinguished than before it was lighted? We mortals also are lighted and extinguished. The period of suffering comes in between. But on either side, there is a deep peace. Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 299 of War and Peace. Thanks for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the description. Also down there in the links, you'll find links to my Amazon wishlist for books and movies. If you purchase me one of those, thank you very much, and we'll set up a Zoom call or something to discuss that book or that movie. Your support in any event is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 300 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.